to you about ancestral healing, inner child healing, and shamanic journeying, and how I used these tools to really work on worthiness and the deep ancestral wounds that run through my whole lineage, probably women in general, to be fair. But how it come about was I was actively healing my inner child. I'd been doing it for a long time, and really trying to do some self-inquiry of where sexual trauma come from, where worthiness, self-value, self-love, really doing self-inquiry for a good couple of months. And this was the final shamanic journey related to this aspect that needed healing. And I had been contemplating the fact that in my family, on my mum's side of the family, there was 2 generations that I knew that had hip problems. Like, my nan had a hip replacement and my mum had a hip replacement really young. Like, my mum had a hip replacement in her 40s, which is so young for a woman to have a hip replacement. So I've also experienced problems with my hip and my knee and that side of my body. Now, it was on the right side of my body, which is the masculine side of our body, but the feminine side of the brain. So I was doing this inquiry. So it was obviously subconscious beliefs that lied within my feminine side, but it was impacting my masculine side, like my doing, the way I was behaving, the way I was acting. And that's why it was being held in my hip. So I'd been doing some different healing modalities and trying to figure out what beliefs were creating this stored energy in my hip on the right side of my body. So I went in to do my own personal healing modality that I had created. That this has happened over time. I don't know what to really call it. It's Laura's healing modality. It's a mixture of all the different things I learned over the years, but it very much is very relatable to shamanic healing and shamanic journeying. And, this is actually something that you can do at home on your own. I did it at home. I've done it with practitioners and at home on my own. You don't need to spend loads and loads of money doing it. However, when you first begin, you do sometimes need to do it with somebody who is experienced in that, so they can kind of guide you through. And yeah, I've been doing shamanic journeying for over 12 years, maybe 15 years. And right at the beginning, I very much used other practitioners. I used different YouTube videos. I used different, I've worked with lots of different people who have guided me through a shamanic journey. And now I just do it on my own. I know how to get into that kind of state, that way of being, and access those parts of the mind through these journeying. So I was self-inquiring about this stored energy in the hip, actively healing my inner child, looking at shadow aspects. I was balls deep in this deep work that I was doing. And whilst I was sitting there in my shamanic journey, I could see myself as a young girl, like my inner child. And she was there and she was feeling so crap about herself. She wouldn't look at me or look at anyone. Her head was down. She felt really unworthy, a little bit disgusted, unattractive, just really hurt. She was really hurt, this aspect of self. And then I couldn't, like I said, she couldn't even look at herself. She didn't want to acknowledge who she was. She had a lot of shame, a lot of sadness about her. And then it went into this fetus. Now, there's lots and lots of details to this journey. Some I've written it all down and diarised it. Some I can't remember. You're not meant to remember. That some are, and I will only share some of it with you because it's very long and very, very deep. So the transitions between the parts, it might be a bit like, how did this happen? So like I say, there was the young inner child there. She was really sad. I couldn't connect to her. She wouldn't look at me. So when I've done inner child healing before, I've been able to communicate with that aspect, talk to her, connect with her, give her what she needed. But at this particular time, she was like very much like head down. No, man, I just don't want to look at anybody. I feel so disgusted in myself. Then it switched up and I become a fetus. Which you have to remember when you're doing ancestral healing, you know, we pick up the trauma as a fetus, you know, like you're born into this existence with trauma already from your ancestors, from your lineage. Like regardless of what you experience within this existence, you will bring forward with you trauma that you've experienced on different timelines, in different time zones, and through your ancestors. Like, you know, it's deep shit. So I become a fetus, and I was a fetus, and I was just giving this tiny little fetus loads and loads of heart healing, pumping love into its heart constantly. And then this is where it gets a bit strange. So then there was another fetus, and it was like me in the core, then my mum as a fetus, then my nan as a fetus, then my great nan, then my great nan, and it went on and on and on. And it was like, you know, a little bit like them Russian dolls where they have all them different layers. It was like that, but as fetuses, and we was all like together, and all of our hearts were beating at the same time. So this healing that I was giving to my fetus was going through all this lineage, and it was like so beautiful and so loving. Then in front of all of these fetuses, stood my daughter. And she wasn't actually a fetus, which shocked me because, you know, she's my daughter, so she comes after me. So if the pattern had been carrying on, like, then she would be a fetus too. But she wasn't. She was standing in front of this big line of fetuses and was just like, no more, no more. And she was this powerhouse of purity and strength. And it was just, her energy was amazing. And that was that. Then it switched in to show me this whole scenario that was playing out, and where the shame and the resentment was coming from. So after this beautiful fetal heart healing and my daughter, the powerhouse, just beautifully standing there, I then was standing and observing. Now this happens a lot in my shamanic journeys. I observe things playing out, and I was a young girl, or whether it was me. I say I was because that's how my mind makes sense of it. It's like watching a movie, you know. It's not actually me standing there. But when I'm saying like I'm standing here watching this all play out. But there was a young girl that was there. And it felt like me, it felt connected to me, whether it was ancestral, whatever. And she was young, quite young, like probably about 10. And she was playing in the field very innocently, beautiful energy, just chilling and playing and happy and laughing. And this was very old times, like olden times. Like I couldn't even recognise any of the stuff that's going on. It was way before any history that I'd ever kind of come across. And she was playing in the field, and along come this man, and he grabbed her and was dragging her into this barn. And I knew what was going to happen, see, because I said I've done a lot of this kind of healing on myself before, and I've watched out sexual trauma and different scenarios play out in very many different ways. Sometimes me being the person that's the doing, sometimes me being the person that's receiving, you know. So I kind of knew what was going to happen. And so my higher self that was there, I was like, I can't watch this. I don't want to watch what's going to happen. Because in my previous shamanic journeys, when something's happened, sometimes I would like intervene. So a shamanic journey, you know, like it's taking you to deep parts of the subconscious mind and unconscious mind, of beliefs and things that lie within there, whether they're patterns or behaviours or trauma or ancestral stuff or stuff that karma that you've been birthed with, or like it's all stuff that's deeply hidden in the subconscious mind. It's so much, it's endless, it's absolutely endless, the stuff that's in there. Yeah. So sometimes when you're healing that aspect, you can intervene. When you're watching something play out, you can act as the higher self and give guidance. I've intervened, like I've stopped things from happening and things like this, yeah. But at this point now, I just observe. I don't try to get actively involved. But I knew what was coming, so I didn't even want to observe this. I was like, oh, no way, this is like I'd seen rape occur, and I'd seen me being a sex worker, and I'd seen me being a madam and a mistress, and I'd seen me being the man I'd seen all of this stuff, do you know what I mean? I weren't like shy of it, but this was a young girl, man, and I was like, I can't watch this is making me feel physically sick. And in this physical world, in the 3D, like I actually did feel physically sick. I'm purging and crying, and there's loads of emotion going on. So even though I'm in this shamanic journey in the mind, this body is like, whoa, like really feeling deeply what's about to occur. And my higher self was like, keep watching. I was like, this is fucking crazy. Like, why are you making me watch this? I don't want to watch this. This is not nice. I don't want to see it. And I was like, watch. You need to see this whole thing. Watch it. So anyway, this young girl, and I was like, anyway, don't worry, she's going to be okay. She got raped. She did get raped by this man. And after he finished, he had his back to her and was putting his boots on, and she did actually jump on his back and cut his head off. So that made me feel a bit better. But that occurred. Now, what went on to happen was this young girl ended up becoming pregnant. And her family disowned her, but she decided to keep the baby for whatever reason. She kept the baby, and she went off to another little village, and she had this little girl, and it was a girl. Now, this little girl grew up, and she was beautiful. She was kind. She was intuitive. She was caring. Aesthetically, she was very, very pretty. She got lots of attention. And what it actually showed me in this meditation was how resentful, that even though the mum had been raped, she's a grown woman now, she'd chose to keep this girl, she was really resentful of her daughter, of her purity, of her beauty, of the attention that she got. She felt like her innocence had been robbed, her chance at a life, a chance of experience in the world had been taken away from her, that her beauty, her value had been taken away. So what she would do in this meditation is, it was almost like to the outside world, she'd portray her daughter around. She'd take her daughter around with her and be like, this is my daughter, she's amazing, look at her. And she kind of sold her a little bit, like she was trying to sell her into the sex work thing as well, you know, that was definitely going on. But then when they'd go home or behind closed doors, she'd really put her daughter down. She would take the piss out of her, belittle her, make her feel shit about herself. And it all came down to this deep, deep jealousy. So then, you know, like, this as well can be relatable to me. Like, I had my daughter really, really young, and I had massive dreams and aspirations of the life that I was going to go on to lead. And there was definitely resentment towards her when I was unconscious of, like, especially because this is ancestral as well, so I would have had this, and the fact that it was playing out in my real life, you know, like I'd had my daughter young, my dreams got stopped, I didn't get to go travelling, I didn't take up the job in London, I didn't take up any of the places that I got in all these fantastic universities. I become a mum, which was my choice. I actively chose to do that, but there must have been some resentment. So anyway, this is like them playing out. So what I did in this scenario was, this is where the healing came and took place between the mother and daughter, is I sat them down around this circle and spoke to them both and said to the mum, very much so, how I wanted her to see her beauty. I showed her herself in the mirror. The daughter dressed her mum up, made her mum look all pretty, made her mum feel confident, and kind of healed that relationship within this meditation. Lots of different things went on that was needed in that meditation. And after that, it was like that had been kind of healed. And it was showing me this energy that was held in the hip, which the hip is where we often hold resentment and shame, sexual shame, was where that had occurred in, you know, this had been happening in generation after generation. Granted, you know, there might not have been the rape, and the little girl but that's where it originated from, like many generations ago within my family. And each lifetime that had happened where, you know, the mum had given up her life given up her freedom, given up her identity, given up her own beauty, given up everything, absolutely everything, to have their children, daughters. And this was going on because this was very much between mother and daughter relationship that I was healing and working through. So it was like it had happened in all these lifetimes, and they was deeply resentful, like, and they didn't feel appreciated or seen by their own daughter or by the world. And you know, the sexual shame that had gone on was where that had been held in all my families, and through every single existence and lifetime that had impacted us as a family in one way or another. You know, we all have individual journeys, so each person that's been born with this sexual shame and this resentment, it would have played out in different ways, but this was the core reason. And this is what I always say about physical misalignments in the body. When your body is physically out of balance or in pain or going through something, there is always a deeper reason to it. It's about looking at all the aspects. Like, I knew it wasn't just, oh, in my family we just have dodgy hips, you know. I weren't willing to settle for that, like, nah. And that's, you can always investigate things like the knee that I spoke about at the beginning, that actually goes on to be a bit about ego and being scared to move forward and push forward and be seen and stuff, but that's a whole nother situation. We'll keep focused on this, otherwise I'll go off again. So yeah, it was desperately showing me all of this stuff that's gone on, and I've done loads of healing work between the mother and daughter, and this work that goes on, what you need to understand, what I've noticed, is when I do deep healing work like this on myself, this does most definitely impact my daughter, my mum, and the women around me. It is like the energetic connection between our bloodline. Whatever work that I do impacts them positively and impacts me positively, and therefore our connection positively. For sure. I've seen it happen so many times. Like, it's crazy, actually. Like, after doing this work, it's like, wow, how much it impacts on an energetic level. And yeah, like, just dealing and working through that. Then what actually happened is, after that relationship was healed, between the mother and daughter, the daughter grew up to be her complete own person. She was like doing her own thing. She had a great career. She was seriously happy. She embraced her beauty. She was very intuitive. And the mum taught the daughter how to be wise, how to be strong, how to be a warrior, how to fight off, you know, these negative situations, to be like able to navigate life, listening to her intuition, but also to be soft and caring and open and loving and true to her authentic self. And there was a lot of stuff playing out where the mother and daughter then went on to have a completely different life and relationship, and how beautiful it is. And that the mum was no longer trying to make the daughter be a version of herself, like be who she wanted to be. And again, this actually, before I was conscious, this did play out with my, like when I had my daughter, I made her into like a little dolly. She wore everything glittery and pink and very pretty, and I wanted her, like, even when we was looking at universities the other day, like, I was talking to her, and I said to her that, you know, don't go uni if you don't want to go uni, because I was very aware that I don't want to push that on her. That was something that I didn't get to do, and I don't want to push that on her. Like, she ain't me, do you know what I mean? She's her own authentic self. But that's what I'm saying. It did used to play out when I was unconscious to it. When I was conscious and was going to university, and I was just saying that this is an option. You don't have to follow my dreams, man, and stuff like that. And also, when I was unconscious and I was trying to make her into something that she wasn't, the resentment that her and I had. And once I did lots of healing work, not just this journey, previous to that, my daughter has completely got her own identity. She's completely herself. She's figured that out herself. She's gone through all different stages and all different eccentric things. And now she's still discovering that. She's young. She's only 17, nearly 18, you know, like, she's got a lot of time to go on to discover who she really is and what she really likes. But I was no longer trying to make her a mini me, which is a big thing. But this is not just something that is within my family. This will be between mother and daughter in lots of generations. Like, women try to do that, push that on them, make them be. And my daughter is literally herself. She'll be herself, dresses how she wants to, does what she wants to. She's got her own identity, and that's that. And I love and respect her for it. It's complete polar opposite to me. Sometimes it's very triggering. Sometimes I can't understand it. sometimes it inspires me. It's all different things, but I still just don't make her me. So yeah, this mother and daughter went on back to the shamanic journey. They went on to, the mum was then teaching the daughter all different skills, and the daughter went off and travelled the world. And she was going, and the mum was waving her off goodbye. She'd done her job, do you know what I mean? She'd brought her up to be strong and wise, authentic, all those things. And it was time for the daughter to go off now and find herself. And this is another thing that we find, is that our relationships with our children, you know, like when they grow up, we want to keep them close, because when you've given your all as a mum, you've given your whole life over to being a mum and parenting, when that time comes that they're to fly the nest, there's so many parents that hold on to them. They're codependent. They've become codependent on their children, and without their children they don't have an identity. And I can definitely understand and relate this, because when my son started getting older, there was a space in my life where I was like, what am I? Like, they don't need me as much now. Oh my God, they don't need me. They don't need me. What am I without being needed as a mum? What am I? But again, I was conscious of it, so I haven't stopped them or anything like that. I've allowed them to go be themselves and have their life. And I actually had an amazing opportunity to do all of this deep healing, to do lots of self-discovery, to figure out who I was outside of being a mum, you know, like get to know myself, like understand all. It's been amazing. It's been an amazing opportunity. But, you know, there is that element of where, as women, when you've been a mum, you literally do give your whole life over to this child. So even when it's not creating resentment, or you've worked through the resentment, once they go off to fly the nest, it's about no longer trying to force them to stay close, to hold them back, to keep them close because you need them. Like, because it's coming from a place of wounded love, and that's toxic love and wounded love. Like, you're not actually unconditionally loving your child, you're loving them based on them fulfilling your need of you having an identity. So she went off on her little travels, and then that's where it showed me in this meditation. It showed me this woman who then found herself, and she had, at first it was really, really quiet at home. She had this little beautiful little cottage in the middle of the woods, and there wasn't a lot of people around her at first, and she was a little bit like me actually, and she had loads of like herbs and trinkets and weird stuff. She was mega cool like me, in her little cottage. And then she like went on her little journey and started finding herself, and she made friends, and she was helping people and healing people, and making tinctures for people and medicines, and she just went on a little journey. So like, it's kind of like, it shows me like 10 years in like fast forward, or 2 years in fast forward, like it's zzz, like, just like I say, it's watching a film. So she was just going on doing this, and then it showed me the life that she built, this sanctuary that she built for other people to come to. And this is where shamanic journeys can show you, because there's no such thing as past, present or future yet. All of those timelines occur at the same time. So sometimes we have to go backwards and look at stuff that we would call past, and then other times that we go forward and look at things that are potential future, potential timelines of futures. Now, they don't necessarily mean they're definitely going to happen, because you could raise your vibration and go on a different timeline. There's free will, you know, like, but it show you in these meditations, I'm always shown past and future. So after all of that past stuff, it then showed me this woman, and she was in the most perfect life, what I would call my perfect life anyway. And she had this sanctuary, and there was waterfalls, and it was like in the middle of nowhere, and there was still sexual shame. Like, she was actually going around rescuing like this warrior woman with like a fucking sword, mate, just going around rescuing people who had been raped or experienced sexual trauma or had really bad other trauma. And she'd take them into her sanctuary, and there was all different rooms in this sanctuary, and to explore the different facets of being a woman, you know, like all of that. Loads and loads of stuff was going on. She had this amazing connection with this man who was just like so in love with this warrior woman. She's a full-blown warrior woman. Anyway, I was in awe of her. I was like, wow, her life's amazing. I want that life. It's perfect. Like, I was just so in awe of the way she'd parented her daughter, let her daughter go off, created this life. I was like proper, like, wow. Then that's when my higher self come back in and faced me to me in a mirror and said, you see what you just watched? All of that, what you just watched, that's you. And I was like, what? She was like, that's what you've done with your daughter. you've broke this ancestral pattern. You have healed so many different layers. And it was referring back to that inner child, the inner child that couldn't look at herself, who felt ashamed, who felt not worthy, unvaluable. It was like, now can you look at yourself? Now can you look at that aspect? Now can you see how amazing you are? Like this deep work that you've done, the patterns that you've broken, the healing, the growth, like the work you've done with your children, with your family, like it's powerful, Laura, it's powerful. And it was trying to show me so I could see my true value. And again, in the physical body, in this 3D world, not in the mind, I'm crying, I'm feeling so much emotion, so much love. And there was loads of conversations that were going on between my higher self and me. And this literally was me then that she was talking to, or this energy. It's not a she. You don't see my higher self. It's very much felt sensations, all of this stuff. Like higher self isn't like a human. It's like a energy, like a whitish energy, I suppose. And she was having all these conversations and showing me like, you need to really see your value now, your worth, that's you. And then that's when, after I'd kind of done that, there was like this team of people then come forward, and that's when my branding of my tattoo come from. And the part that, I'll show you, this part, the V with the lines that go across, are the lives that, that I'd kind of been this warrior woman, where I'd been helping people, saving people, helping them to grow, deal with their past trauma, guide them, be there, was loving. And this woman was honestly like such a badass. She was like a full-on like a warrior woman. That's the only way. She reminded me a little bit of like a Amazon gladiator woman or something. She was like hot, man, and powerful. I was like, yeah. So they put this tattoo on me and was branded, but they didn't really talk to me much about it. They just branded me on it and then it disappeared. And there's lots and lots of meaning behind that tattoo, but I won't go too much into that. It's a bit personal of what those different things mean. And then that's when after the tattoo, they was like, right, okay, like that warrior woman, that aspect of you, that feisty, strong, powerful woman, she's there. But at this point, I was still very in Laura world, 3D world. I was very, very guarded. I had lots of walls built up. I was pushing a lot of people out because I didn't have a lot of trust in people. Again, that was actually personal, but also ancestral, where my relationships were very wounded. So I didn't have a lot of trust. So they was like saying, that warrior woman, she's always there. She's always going to be there. It's embedded in you now. You're branded like this. You're part of a tribe. Like that tattoo is very tribal. For me and the other souls and people who have also worked together and done this. And there's like, you can always access her whenever, but you need to also open up to this soft side of you, this open heart, like this loving feminine aspect, because as I've said to you before, there's so many different aspects of a woman. Women are fucking amazing, but also very deep. There's so many different sides to a woman. And I was like, you don't need to be that. You can let your armor down. And they go on to like say, and I was seriously defensive in this meditation, this part. I was like, no, I'm not taking my armor off. I want to be a soldier. I want to keep it there. I can't trust people. And I was like, stop. Like, it's there. It's that you can push a button and she'll always be there. She'll fight. She'll protect you, protect your children, protect the ones you love. But you don't have to operate as her 24/7. You can allow your soft side. You can allow people in. You can allow connections in. You can allow loving. You can allow yourself to receive love. Like now you see your value. You have a high level of self-worth, a high level of self-value, a high level of self-love. You are able to actually receive that back, So yeah, there's lots of, this was a very, very long meditation, a very big emotional release, a very big understanding of my ancestral lineage and also inner child healing. There was so much going on, honestly. It was my most powerful journey to date, for sure. Because it was almost like the last layer. I'd done so many different layers of sexual shame, self-worth, and this was just boom, like so powerful. And yeah, so this is giving you a bit of an idea of the wounds that run through lineages and family and how you can start doing it. Like, you can work with other practitioners, but like I say, don't be mugged off. Don't let people charge you hundreds and hundreds of pounds to keep going back to them. Yes, if you are charging quite a bit of money for a one-off session, that's amazing, because you know you're going to give that person all the tools they need in that session. But if someone is expecting you to continuously go back to them for this shamanic journeys, for shamanic healing, that's wounded. Like, they're codependent on you returning to them. Like, you know, you only really need to go do these things with people maybe once or twice. You go back to them when you can't access that state or that way of being. And yeah, and being open that this takes time. Like I said, I've been doing shamanic journeying for 15 years. So at first there was nowhere near this depth of what I was able to access, what I was able to heal, what I was able to see. But every little detail means something. So even if you're doing a shamanic journey at home, you can actually go on YouTube and get shamanic drums. And that's the shamanic drum is a nice way to get into that meditative state, to that frequency, to access. So you can just begin by doing that and just seeing what comes up. Not really having a question, just seeing. That's if you just want to do it on a surface level. Like I said, if you want to go deep with it, you do need a practitioner to begin with. So yeah, this is another one of my shamanic journeys and layers to healing femininity and mother wounds that we all carry. And it's about being conscious of that and how you can make changes.